Welcome into Triple Zeros. I am Josh Buckhalter. Hit me up on Twitter at JoshGBuck. Follow me on Facebook. Hit me up at Triple Zeros No Ease. That's at Triple Zeros No Ease. Hit up the website juiceandjumpers.wordpress.com. And of course, the email is triplezerosnoease@gmail.com. Starting off with the NBA. Just went into All-Star Week and played the last games before we get the All-Star Game on Sunday. Obviously, we had the skills competition, three-point contest, and whatnot before that. But had the last two games tonight. Before we get into those, though, wanted to talk about a couple of things. Steve Stout, the new branding, marketing face for the New York Knicks, went on First Take a couple of days ago and said some not outlandish but pretty bold things, stating that he was going to be to the Knicks what Drake was to the Toronto Raptors, and that didn't seem to go over too well with a lot of people. It was just a wild statement to kind of come out of nowhere and make. And then on top of that, he decided to say that there would be a coaching search going on in the offseason. So now, you could imagine that probably didn't sit too well with upper management because, you know, that's not necessarily his jurisdiction. And in case there was any uncertainty about that, they let him know and released this following statement. From New York Knicks. While Steve Stout is a valued contributor to the Knicks' marketing and branding efforts, he does not speak on behalf of New York Knicks personnel and basketball operations. Any decisions regarding the operations of the team will be made by New York president of the New York Knicks. From Steve Stout, in my excitement to defend the Knicks on live TV today, I inadvertently insinuated about Knicks personnel. That was no insinuation. I look forward to working with Knicks management to elevate the great Knicks brand moving forward. He's a marketing guy. He's a branding guru, as he would call himself. So it's not surprising to see him come out here and say some kind of outlandish things, but I think to go out on national TV and say and say that you're going to be helping conduct a coaching search and that the Drake thing was probably not it. It was definitely got to be the coaching search project. That's not something that you want to have happen if you're an NBA franchise trying to trying to save face. You already have enough going on with the odd dealings of being yourselves for the past 40 plus years. 50 years, so you don't need anybody coming in. The new guy can't come in causing problems. That's a problem. So I just want to kind of just take a step back and realize what's happening here. The Knicks and their efforts to recreate, because remember, James Dolan wants to go and get Masai Ujiri, but there was talks of tampering because he keeps openly speaking about that. Masai Ujiri, as we all know, is still under contract with the Toronto Raptors. It's just weird because the Knicks, man, it's like they tried to go a mixture of the Drake branding thing. They're talking about me getting Masai. We know that they want to do where is any of the internal things where you just, you know, it stays in house. You don't see that, and I think that's a real problem. Now, when you look back and you wonder, okay, they had David Fizdale in there, and that whole thing went down. Remember the Isaiah Thomas? Like, it's just every single iteration of this organization, every front office configuration, every head coach appointment, every single thing has just seemed to go awry for them, and yet and still they continue to do things in a similar fashion publicly and haphazardly. And I guess at this point it's no wonder or no big secret why they've been where they've been for the past forever, basically. And I know it's got to be even worse if you're a Knicks fan, but it's not a good look when you have these kind of things happen. You try to do something different and it backfires immediately. That's bad. But turning to some good news, LeBron James' I Promise School announced that there will be a partnership with the Ohio-based Kent State University, and they will be granting just under 150 students full 4-year free tuition and 1 year of room and board. That is a great thing. Had to throw that in there real quick. You know, started off a little bit of the I don't want to say down. I guess it was kind of like a booster because it makes me feel better. Like I said, as a Bulls fan, to see the Knicks out here operating in a wild way. But the I Promise and Kent State partnership is one that is great for everyone involved, and I think it's a really good look. And you know, that school was a good idea when it started, and it continues to do good things. So hopefully that continues on. Back to the on-court stuff, though. Damian Lillard announced that he will miss the All-Star game with an injury. He will still be performing, though, so I guess Damian Lillard is injured, but Dame Dollars is healthy. I'm not sure. You can go ahead and figure that out. But Devin Booker has been announced as his replacement. Devin Booker this season is averaging 26.4 points, shooting just under 50% from the floor, averaging 4 rebounds and 6 assists per game. And he was one of the guys who was talked about as being a snub. Now, the West is a lot more loaded than the East is, but he was definitely one of the people that people were mentioning as a snub. And, of course, this goes back to, largely what was being held against him was that his stats were looked at as empty or meaningless because the team is losing. But then you look over in the East and you have a guy like Trae Young. So like I said, the West is a lot deeper, so that played into it a lot. But to see that he's getting it out now is great for him, and it's also great for the organization because they definitely need something positive after that team has been kind of just spinning its wheels in the sand for quite some time now. After the Mike D'Antoni years, it doesn't mean that they'll be coming out of this for a while. That's slump. I still think that Devin Booker ultimately ends up elsewhere, but I think this helps them get a bigger return, if anything. But this is just not. It's a big deal. It's a big deal for him and for them. No matter how salty I am that they didn't give it to Zach. Yes, Zach LaVine should have been on the All-Star game in Chicago. Look, Kemba Walker got it last year down in Charlotte. I think Zach should have got it this year. I know that there is some trepidation about his stats being empty. And I'm not saying that he's the scorer, because I know Trae Young's stats and his versatility are what got him in. But I still think that to talk about Zach LaVine as simply a one-dimensional guy is to take away from everything that's going on with the rest of this team and exactly what it is that he brings to the table each and every night. The man goes hard every night, every single game. But I digress. I'm getting off the track here, talking about Devin Booker and his great accomplishment. Congratulations to him. He will be wearing his Los Suns jersey, representing his heritage and the team's heritage, Los Suns jersey, in the All-Star game. In other news from the evening, Thursday night, Kawhi Leonard kind of shriveled down the stretch there. Now, he had 28 points, but he only scored, I think, 5 points in fourth quarter and overtime as the Clips fell to the seas, and looked like a much more. It's a wild scoring game, 140 to 130. Just a high scoring back and forth, double overtime game. So you're going to expect the high scores, but on the Celtics, Jason Tatum had 39 points, Marcus Smart had 31, and Gordon Hayward had 21 points, as Tatum and Smart were just kind of rotating off, and Kawhi was out there fending for himself. Paul George left early after about 15 minutes. He had a tight hammy. You still got 35 off the bench from Lou Will and 24 from Montrezl Harrell, but it just wasn't enough to contend with the Celtics team. I see a lot of people going at Kawhi. Shannon Sharp was going after Kawhi and talking about they don't want to hear about his elite defense and how Smart and Tatum were teeing off on him, taking turns. But I think they're kind of missing the point that this is the game before the last game before the All-Star break, and on top of that, it's just 27 games left in the regular season before the playoffs. I'm not going to say that Kawhi mailed it in, but I could definitely see a situation where this one wasn't necessarily one where he took as serious as he could have. But on top of that, let's not act like the Celtics are a bad team. They're a good team. The Celtics are at least Eastern Conference Finals contenders, so I don't know why the surprise would be that oh my goodness, they beat the Clippers. I kind of find it funny when in basketball we examine players. I know great players are supposed to bring it every night. I get that. But I feel like we take that to the extreme when there's 82 games in the season, and of course Kawhi sat down like half of the games this year already, so I guess people expect him to be fresher and more ready to go for every contest that he does appear in. But I still think that no matter what, the goal for his rest is never for him to be healthy and be able to get full bore in the game. The goal is for him to be healthy and ready to give full effort in the playoffs. And as long as that's what is being achieved, I don't think they care. They'll make their way into the top half of the Western Conference. If not, it'll be a 5 seed at worst, but I still think that they will ultimately get there. They don't have the big body down low that I think could cause them trouble, which is why my pick has still been the Lakers when things are all said and done in the playoffs. But I don't see why you'd have to scrutinize Kawhi Leonard for game 60-something, game 50-something in the before the All-Star, right before the All-Star break. I just don't see the need to go ahead and feel like this is the one against a team that's really good. Again, we talked about this last episode. Brad Stevens' teams are really well coached. They execute well, especially when they don't have the ego, the superstar ego in the room, and that's exactly what they have now. So I'm not sure exactly what it is that I'm supposed to be upset about here, but I think it's pretty obvious that, good teams will get wins off of other good teams. And as far as Kawhi's bad night, hey man, it happens. Now, Paul George with that hammy, watch that. Paul George has been banged up an awful lot for somebody that they're going to be relying on heavily come playoff time. Without him, the rest of this means nothing, because I don't know how this team's depth is it's good, but it's really thin. So like they have the Luz, the Montrez, you got Landry Shamet, but it's just not great depth. And they're still missing some pieces down low. Like I said, I think that in the playoffs over 7 games, them and the Lakers, it's going to be tough for them to keep Anthony Davis and Dwight Howard off the boards, out of the paint, and then still contend with those two, plus JaVale McGee on the other side, plus JaVale with lobs. And then LeBron James is a freight train coming down the middle. I just think that could be a problem for the Clippers when they get to the playoffs and that 7-game physicality starts to take a toll on their bodies. We'll see how it all plays out, obviously, but because that's what will be the Western Conference Finals matchup, will be the Clippers and the Lakers. Some other notes from the Eastern Conference. Oh, real quick though, the Thunder did take it to the New Orleans Pelicans. Shout out to the Thunder for keeping things going. They are looking like a team that is happy that they have those outside draft selections, because they're killing their own draft selections right now. But interesting note about the Western Conference, there is no team that is in the playoffs right now that over their last 10 games is below 500. The worst, I think there are two or three 5-5 teams. No team in the Western Conference is below 500 in their last 10 games. However, you go to the Eastern Conference, conversely rather, you go to the Eastern Conference, Miami, the current 4 seed, has lost 4 of their last 5. Indianapolis, the current 5 seed, they are 3-7 in their last 10. Now, they did snap a 6-game skid with a win against the Milwaukee Bucks on Wednesday night. You have the Washington Wizards, though, who are now 6-4. They won 5 of their last 7, so this is going another flip. Brooklyn has won 4 of their last 5, but more importantly for Brooklyn, they snapped Toronto's franchise record 15-game win streak. I told you last episode about how I had to give a little bit of a mea culpa for the Raptors because I was dogging them that they weren't going to be any good without Kawhi, and they proved me wrong more than a few occasions, and so be it. But they did get that win streak snapped by the Brooklyn Nets, who are 7-3 in their last 10, and they're not going to do much when it comes to the playoffs, but I think they're just showing you how good this core is, the supporting cast is, and when they get their big dogs back and in full rhythm, I think they're going to be something special. Now, we can talk all day about the moodiness of a Kyrie Irving and Kevin Durant, but I think together on the floor, I think it'll be like, this might be a case where 2 wrongs make a right, and they're not necessarily wrong, but you just get what I'm trying to say here. I think that the 2 energies will work and feed off each other, where I don't think it'll be much of a problem at all, really, if we're being honest, because I think that both of these guys are ready to go full bore for a title and prove that they can do it without those other alphas around, but really in a more of a symbiotic relationship. That's what I think that's what I think the goal for them is, to kind of be symbiotic in this. And honestly, on the floor, Kyrie will be deferring to Kevin Durant if Kevin Durant is still Kevin Durant, but it'll operate more of a partnership than it will a hierarchy. That's just my personal outlook on it. We'll see how it all ends up playing out. And then I touched on it earlier. My lowly Bulls. They limp into All-Star Weekend 19-36. This is the same record pointed out by Cody Westerland. Shout out to Cody Westerland. They are the same record now as they had 2 years ago when they began their rebuild in earnest. And all I can say is wow. And in the piece that'll be coming out for Pippen Ain't Easy, check that out tomorrow or Saturday morning, PippenAintEasy.com. I write about how it's been the same excuses. It's the same thing. And honestly, they say it's a poor musician that blames his instrument. We've heard Paxson blame injuries so many times over. And we know they have the rumors about there being a shakeup coming. But you just have to kind of feel for fans who don't have the outlet, such as myself, who can write it down and get it out. But like, just kind of having to deal with this and just seeing the way that this major market team operates a lot like a small market organization, and it's really kind of embarrassing at times. You had Daniel Gafford not getting any time in the Bulls' last game, as Cristiano Felicio and Luke Cornett played more minutes than I think anybody would have been able to stomach if they had known it was coming. But you just don't know what the direction of this team is. Like, you want to see development, but you don't play a guy like Gafford, who could use all the time he can get. He's supposed to be healthy, and Boylan said after the game he was healthy. He just chose not to play him because he liked it. It just doesn't make sense. And it hasn't made sense for quite a while. They've gotten lucky once. People say they've gotten the rebuild right twice. I say they got it right once, and that once was luck. You can't plan for the first overall pick. You get lucky with the first overall pick, and that's what happened there. So it's at that point, again, they're the same record they were when they began the rebuild. I think it's time now that you rebuild again. What are you waiting for? This was talked over with a colleague earlier. Why wait till the end of the season to clear the house with Boylan? He can't come back next year. There's no way you can bring him back. But they've tried to kind of leave that door open, saying that they get to evaluate the rest of the year, him with a full roster, and this, that, and the third. That's what they told us coming into this year. I know the guys got hurt, but that just goes to that's a larger issue. Could be the guys that Paxson picked, therefore it's on Paxson. Could be the training staff not handling medical issues right. We know what happened with Lowry and that pelvic issue. So there's a lot wrong here, not a lot right, not a lot to be optimistic about. And I honestly think that they are far closer to a complete teardown and maybe a couple more really bad seasons than they are at all to a playoff push, which they keep trying to talk for. I told you, basketball hell is mock. When they went to the trade deadline and didn't make any moves, they signaled that they are content with being right there, mediocre, feigning competitiveness, feigning playoff contention, but not really bringing anything of substance to it. And you're seeing the results of that right now. And it's really sad because the fans of Chicago deserve a lot better than the product that they're getting on the floor right now, than the effort they're getting from the front office. The product on the floor is what is being provided, but they definitely deserve more than what the front office effort has been given to them, because I think that those guys have gotten comfortable in their roles. I mean, it's understandable what happens, but it's definitely not something that should continue on much longer, let alone beyond this year. I think it should start with the coaching change now. I know it's going to take a lot of backlash. I don't like calling for guys to be fired. I don't. But I think if they're going to make a move, bring in somebody now. But you know what? I take it back. Let it ride out, because you can't evaluate them with this roster anyway. So, never mind. 180. See, I can change. I'm open to change. There's that. Going to take a quick break, and when I come back, going to give you a couple of quick hits on some NFL news and set up the interview coming up with Minnesota's football coach Brian Callahan, the offensive line and run game coordinator. Sit tight. Be right back. Triple Zeros. Back now on Triple Zeros, Josh Buckhalter, and again, follow me on Twitter at JoshyBuck. Hit me up on Facebook at Triple Zeros No E's. The website is jukesandjumpers.wordpress.com, and of course, the email address is triplezerosnoe's@gmail.com. That's triplezerosnoe's@gmail.com. Before the break, I told you about the interview coming up with Coach Callahan, Coach Brian Callahan, offensive line coach and run game coordinator of the Minnesota Golden Gophers, who had a wonderful season this year. That'll be coming up at the end of this segment. But first, going to touch on a couple of things that'll be coming up in the podcast of this episode. So be sure to check out the podcast on Anchor, on Spotify, on Apple Podcasts, on Google Podcasts, and wherever you get your podcasts. Look up Triple Zeros, and you will be able to find the interview with Coach Callahan in full coming up after this episode is fully posted. But before I get out of here and set all that up, I do want to hit you off with a couple of news and notes and a little bit of insight for the Chicago Bears. But before we get to the hometown Bears, which is that's a painful thing to talk about too. Just talked about the Bulls and got my blood worked up. Now I gotta calm it down just to bring it back up to talk about the Bears later. But anyway, I digress yet again. The Atlanta Falcons are rumored to be set to release running back Devontae Freeman. They just extended him a season ago, and now they're set to release him again, or release him now. He is likely to join the likes of Todd Gurley and David Johnson, two other high-paid running backs who are now on the market or set to be back on the open market. Does not bode well for a guy like Ezekiel Elliott, even though he has been healthy thus far in his career. And it doesn't bode well for guys like Saquon Barkley, who will be looking for a new contract. And so we already know that Le'Veon Bell could be let go or moved again, even back to the Steelers is a rumor. So just, it's not a good look for the running back position. And we see offenses pick up guys all the time and plug them in and play. Raheem Mostert, Super Bowl running back. He didn't do much in the Super Bowl. He did a good job though. He was a lot of their offense getting to and in the Super Bowl, but basically, you just know that you don't have to invest a lot of money in them to get a lot of production from them. So keep an eye on any other major cuts to come in that area, but that's one that it's a saturated market too. Unfortunately, you're going to have big name guys with a lot of questions that are going to have to take some roles, at least sharing, if not in complete backup roles. So Freeman might be headed for a backup role, honestly. Other news: Jameis Winston got LASIK surgery. You know, he had the 30 season, 34 touchdowns, 30 interceptions, and first one to ever do that. And after the year, went and got LASIK. Listen, I am a Jameis Winston fan I'm a Florida State fan. Okay, first and foremost. So naturally, I became a Jameis Winston fan. I have been saying for the longest though that he has to do something about his eyesight. Clearly, the man can't see. When you see him on the sideline and he's squinting. Like like clearly squinting, trying to see. It shouldn't have been taking this long for this to happen. Now, it does sound like he is supposed to be moving on from the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, but interestingly enough, Brian Perez of NBC's a Pro Bowl or a Super Bowl winning quarterback. Now, granted, the Matt Nagy offense is built on rhythm and timing. James likes to force the ball too, so that's the other thing. I just think his style, not necessarily just the turnovers, but his style doesn't necessarily mesh well enough with what Matt Nagy wants to do. I still would like to see Teddy Bridgewater. I will pound the Teddy Bridgewater tree, bang that drum until he is signed elsewhere, because that's how much I believe in it. Now, I did write a piece for Last Word on Pro Football about the Bears that I'll tell you about in a moment, but real quick, I want to say Myles Garrett of the Cleveland Browns was reinstated. He met with Roger Goodell. Remember, he got suspended. It wasn't an indefinite suspension for bashing Pittsburgh Steelers quarterback Mason Rudolph upside the head with a helmet. He came out and did a interview today and said again that he did so because Garrett used a racial slur towards him. At any rate, he will be reinstated, and I'm sure that'll make a lot of people very unhappy. I'm kind of indifferent towards it. He served his time. They felt it was enough time. He's been reinstated. So be it. Listen. That's wild. My man he bashed somebody with the helmet. You know, outside of the football field, that's dang near assault with a deadly weapon. On the football field, in the heat of the moment, though, I've seen a lot of things happen that could be considered just as bad. So it is what it is. You know, congratulations to him. Don't do it again. Don't do it again. That was a bad look. That was a really, really bad look. And wrapping up before I set up the interview, the Bears. I wrote for Last Word on Pro Football not the final installment, because there's going to be some more narrations when we get to more draft coverage and everything like that, but the preliminary offseason plan for the Chicago Bears as part of the retool series that I have been doing for them. I did all the position groups and everything, coaches and all that have been assessed, and it was time to compile it all. And basically what I laid out was a 3-step plan. It's not really difficult because I think that a lot of it is kind of self-explanatory. Where they need the most help is on offense, so that's where most of their resources will go. They have very limited draft capital, very limited funds, but they can create enough funds to make enough splash to offset anything that they need to do. Now, free agency dollars I would spend in one of two ways. either you go get Teddy Bridgewater and do whatever it takes to make that happen, because I think that their quarterback play will elevate everybody else enough to be just. I really do. I think that would be enough. I honestly do. Or you go out and get. Now you should still do this too, but I mean, you can sacrifice it if it means you got Teddy. If you don't get Teddy, you have to go out and get either Brandon Scherff from the Washington Redskins or Andrews Pete from the New Orleans Saints. Target Pete because it seems like they might be more willing to let him go down to New Orleans. They might be more preparing themselves for that. You know, they kind of they might be ready to let Teddy go. So that's probably the negotiating tactic that the whole smokescreen about them viewing Taysom Hill as a franchise quarterback, maybe trying to help Hill out also. Who knows how that's going to go. But at any rate, you go get Andrews Pete and you go get Austin Hooper from the Atlanta Falcons. You don't get Eric Ebron because that's just Trey Burton Part 2. You can go get Hunter Henry, but I would be concerned about his knee injuries and concussion history. Hooper has had some injury problems too, but he has been a full-time player. He has been a productive player, and I think that, again, if you're not going to spend the money on Teddy, then you got to go out and secure the best you can, and I think Hooper is a guy kind of like Allen Robinson, where a lot of his lack of production comes from him not being utilized fully in his previous. You saw what he could do. He could flourish a lot. So that would be the way I would go there. So it would be either Bridgewater or Pete and Hooper, and then you draft for your needs elsewhere, and you can kind of let the chips fall where they may. Now, of course, it's hard to project what the draft's going to be. We have to see what the combine is, but they've got 2 first rounds and then nothing until the 5th round. So they could trade back. They could move up to make one big splash and go get their guy. Who knows? You know, the rumors are floating around, which don't believe the hype until there's more smoke than that. That's a little puff of smoke. That's another wisp. But I just think that you got to go one of those 2 ways. And honestly, it's Bridgewater first and foremost, and then like a relatively distant second would be the Hooper and Pete route. If you can get anybody else with Bridgewater, that's fine. And then as far as re-signing the free agents, I think you re-sign Nick Kwiatkowski because I think he fits better next to Roquan Smith in that defense. It's a downhill thumper to Roquan Smith, sideline to sideline range. And then you move on from Amukamara. You try to replace him in the draft. Maybe Trey Roberson from the CFL can do it. I'm not sure about that, but maybe. And then at safety, you try to draft somebody as well. Or you try to get a bargain bin guy who can come down and thump in the box, but you have to get Eddie Jackson back to his natural position. I don't think that they'll be replacing Leonard Floyd. If they do, it'll be in the draft or somebody cheap. Somebody they try to get on a Shaq Barrett type deal. But even that I think is unlikely because I think they are happy enough to. The problem with the Bears to me is that they are often too content to even risk bringing in competition for their players, and that's where you fall short. If you're not pushing the guys who aren't performing, no matter how much you like them, then you're never going to get them to get any better, and they'll never feel like they need to get any better. And that's a big issue, I think, for this team, and it's going to continue to be one until they figure that part of what they're trying to do out. So it's kind of simple as that, really. That's going to do it for this episode of Triple Zeros. Again, check out the podcast version because that will be the interview with Coach Brian Callahan. He'll be joining me next. Coach Brian Callahan of the Minnesota Gophers football team, offensive line coach and run game coordinator. So stay tuned. Be right back in a moment. Triple Zeros. That's going to do it for this episode, though. Triple Zeros. You know what to do as soon as you hear that sound because every time. Oh, before I get out of here, I always try to do that, man. Before I get out of here, follow me on Twitter at JoshyBuck. Hit up the Facebook page, Triple Zeros No Ease. Hit up the website, jukesandjumpers.wordpress.com, and the email address, of course, is triple zeros no ease at gmail.com, triple zeros no ease at gmail.com. And now, until the very next time, you know what it is, haunts.